Regina Calcaterra is not only a storyteller tonight, and also, right? Isn't she have something over there in our fabulous? Oh, her books and meetings. You can sign up for that, bid on that, our silent auction. Very exciting. So she's also an international New York Times best-selling author. Yeah, wow. Head on over there afterwards. And she is here to tell us about her journey, in the foster care system and the people outside of that system who believed in her and helped her along the way. So here is Regina with Making Packs. Very well.
So as far as the auction item, this is the very first time I've actually auctioned myself off. So it's not for any dating or anything crazy like that. But since I do a lot of public speaking, if you have a school or a not-for-profit or a book club that you would like me to appear within the New York City region, I will happily do it if you bid on it. Some great money is going to go to this fantastic organization. But the reason why I'm here, very honestly, is because I have known Pat O'Brien, I don't know, 20 years, 2005, yeah. And you can't say no to him. Not for that. And if you do, you better run really fast. So that's what brings me here, and a great respect for Pat and all the great work that he's done. So my four siblings and I grew up in and out of foster homes, homeless shelters, and on the streets of Long Island. We were born to a woman who had 5 kids by 5 different men. Clearly, this woman couldn't take care of herself with 5 children that she had. And my mother was bipolar, but she wasn't diagnosed back in the 1960s and 70s. So people who had mental illness, unfortunately, use alcohol and drugs to try to self-medicate themselves. So what she would ultimately do is just go with these benders, and for weeks at a time. And when she was gone, we were on our own, and that was our happiest time. But we also had to figure out how to eat, how to stay warm, and how to survive. So we did things like going to the beach, and we would dig for clams and mussels and crab for once in a while. We didn't dig; we would just catch them. We would steal vegetables from farms at nighttime. We would take our dog Pepper, and we'd let him out and act as if we were going to try to save him, while the rest of the siblings would go down on the ground, do the belly shuffle, grab as many vegetables as possible, and trying to scam, and trying to run from there. But we also had staged grocery store heists. Literally, we had a lookout and a bunch of other siblings there that we were stealing food, while we also had to look out to make sure that we weren't going to get busted. But we also scavenged clothes from dumpsters and hid out in libraries as they were temperature controlled, and we had clean running water and operating bathrooms. Just think about that. As a kid who's living on the streets or even living in poverty, you're not in a warm environment. Your bathroom usually don't work, and the water isn't clean. So we would try to find areas, places like that, and places was a library. But our biggest fear wasn't hunger. It wasn't cold either, being cold. It was being separated into different foster homes. After a foster home had terrorized us, as there were not background checks back in the early 1970s, my siblings and I made a pact that no one would ever know how we were really living. We made up cover stories for our teachers, for neighbors, for caseworkers, for anyone who might call Child Protective Services. So we always had an explanation of where our mother was. When someone came knocking on the door, if they asked for her at nighttime, we say, "Oh, she's a barmaid." That's what it was called back then. And if they asked where she was in the afternoon, we said she was working at the real estate company. When we asked where she was, if they were knocking on the door at 7 a.m., he said, "Oh, she's working in the deli, peeling carrots." And if someone knocked on the door at 3 a.m., she liked to do. He said, "Well, she worked for a bakery, and so she was delivering bagels." these are all jobs that she had, and she would take us with her. So we knew how it was, to explain the jobs that she actually had. But this is how we lied to try to prevent it from tearing us apart. So we made a pact, and that pact actually lasted for 7 years on our own, with our mother bailing around. But we also knew that the longer the pact lasted, the more danger we were. Just before I turned 14, literally just a few days, my mother brutally beat me, and my body at that point was emaciated, so it wasn't able to absorb the scars and the bruises, and wasn't able to hide them. So when my caseworker came by, because someone obviously called them, she literally told me that if I don't tell her the truth about what is going on, I won't survive, and neither will my siblings who I was raising on my own. Just the thought of actually me dying was fearful, and I knew that we were getting close to there. But she made a promise to us. She said, if you tell me the truth, you're just a few days away from your birthday. So once you turn 14, you can emancipate yourself from your parents. Not only that, you can argue to the court that the court should take away custody of your younger siblings, and they can be adopted. And the thought of them actually being adopted into a home, and for them finally being loved and safe, the way that they should be, is what caused me to break with the pact. So I told the caseworker everything that they never knew for the first 14 years of my life. The very next day, I got off the bus, and I saw the worst thing I could ever see, or any child who has siblings in and out of foster homes could ever see in their driveway. There were 2 cars. One of them took my older sister Camille and I to one foster home, and the other one took Rosie and we went to a separate one. Shortly after that, I met the caseworker, David, at the age of 14, David, to the court to let the court know what was going on. When my mother found out that I was trying to take away her rights over me and take her custody of her siblings, she went to go visit them for a Christmas visit, and she never returned them. She literally kidnapped them and brought them all the way to Idaho, because she was fearful she was going to lose her welfare checks, because each one of us was a welfare check to her. So once that happened, social services didn't do anything to help us at all to try to track them down. A few months later, my caseworker told me I was emancipated. So she said, so now we're going to start independent living training, which is, that's a 17-point checklist back then. And I said, well, what do you mean I'm going to be on my own when I'm 18? Why do I need to learn this? And she said, well, because you're going to be on your own once you turn 18. And I said, well, won't someone want to adopt me? Because I'm freed for adoption. And she said, nope, people don't adopt foster kids, especially older foster kids. Can you imagine at the age of 14 being told for the rest of your life you will never have a safety net? You will never have an adult in your life that cares about you. So nevertheless, I listened to what she was saying. I was taking the independent living training. It included how to go food shopping with money. So a few years after that, I told my foster parents and I told my caseworker that I was going to go to college. And they told me, well, you're not going to college because foster kids don't go to college. But what they didn't know is that there was yet another pact in my life, is I had an English teacher, a social study teacher, and a counselor that actually put together their own pact to get me into college, because they said the only way I will be in control of my destiny is if I get an education, and then I'm smart enough, They helped me fill out the test, figure out how to pay for things, how to do applications. They're the ones that ultimately got me in college and built up my self-esteem and my confidence to be able to harness the resources that were out there. Not my foster home, not the caseworker, but these were the kind touches along the way that got me there. So after working 3 jobs at once while while going to college, I made it almost fully through, except in my last year of college, I aged out. And when I went to college, I made a pact for myself that I'm going to graduate college regardless of how difficult it was. So I wasn't going to give up once I aged out, once I didn't get the additional money. I didn't know how to pay rent. I didn't have food to eat. But I knew I was going to graduate college. And then 6 months after that, I graduated from SUNY New Paltz. Fast forwarding, thank you. Fast forwarding, I decided I was going to go to law school. I was working full-time during the day for 4 years. I went to law school at nighttime. Who's ever done that? That is, between like 6 to 10 at nighttime for 4 years, which is pretty miserable. And I remember when I passed the bar, and I got that thin envelope that says you've passed the bar, as opposed to that thick envelope. And I realized for the very first time, for the rest of my life, I will only have one job. So I never planned on doing anything within the child welfare realm. I didn't want to live in that world. I didn't want to work from it. And but somewhere around maybe November and December 2005, there was an article in the Times on the city section, under the fold, but half of that page was about an organization called You Gotta Believe, that actually worked to find older youth permanency. I couldn't believe that there's an organization like that, because I was told that was not adoptable. So I called up Pat. I wouldn't leave him alone. I started following this. I had to be interested for a year to be on the board, right? I had to go to all the different events. And my goal with joining You Gotta Believe was actually to give people a different perception about foster kids, as opposed to the criminals on like certain SVU, types of movies that we were the criminals, as opposed to we were just kids who were looking for a parent. So after joining You Gotta Believe, I wanted to do whatever I possibly could to raise awareness about the plight of older foster children. And then in 2013, I wrote my memoir, talked about You Gotta Believe and the plight of older foster youth. It became a New York Times bestseller. So I pretty much made sure I definitely raised that way. So after doing that, 1 year afterwards, after my book came out, a year afterwards, I by the way, talking about You Gotta Believe, Pat O'Brien is the founder of You Gotta Believe. For those of you who don't hear, the gentleman I can't say no to him. Okay. So 1 year afterwards, I went to an event that You Gotta Believe was and they were having some of their older youth to come before audiences, prospective parents, to tell their story. And I knew most of the youth that were there. But there was this first young woman that I've never seen before. She gets up before everyone, says her name is Regina. She has a 3.5 GPA. She's a full scholarship for college. She's a home health aide, and she is fluent in ASL. But she was kicked out of her foster home because she was turned 21. And I looked around and started telling people that You Gotta Believe, she's a me. But I wasn't there to adopt her. I wasn't there to adopt anybody. But when I met her, I realized how fragile she was, how much she could actually either fail or succeed, because she was living in this fine line and she was living in her boyfriend's family's home, but she wasn't safe to necessarily be there. That wasn't what her space was. So what I did, because there were plenty of parents who were interested in parenting her. And she specifically had what she wanted in her head as a family. She wanted a mom and a dad, 2 older siblings, and a dog. So it wasn't part of my plan anyway, and I certainly didn't make any of those. But my concern is that I need to keep her close. I need to mentor her and make sure she makes the right decision. So I invited her to my home on the eastern area called Southold, and said, you can stay here for the summer. You've got to work. Have the parents come and meet you, here at your, at my home. So at least she had the safe space. So as she was doing this, going through the process, she was finding parents that kind of fit that whole, the mom and dad, the 2 two little siblings and the dog, actually. But at the end of the summer, she asked me to be her forever mom. And at that point, we're going to pack together that we're going to break the cycle with her. Like this cycle is going to stop with Brazanne. Fast forwarding. She graduated college. She got her master's of social work from CUNY Hunter. She's now licensed. She's married. She has 2 beautiful babies that are, I'm a grandparent, but I'm also their Gigi. And we together, with the pact that we made to make sure that we were going to break the cycle, we did it together. Thank you.